These financial tips and resources are brought to you by USAA, a proud supporter of America's military, serving veterans and their families since 1922.
It's no secret, lots of married couples fight about money. It's actually one of the top things that they do fight about. What kind of plans should military families have in place so this does not become an issue for them?
So I actually got remarried this past year.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And so everyone makes fun of me, but one of the things that I did before we got married is I sat down with my fiance at the time and I said, we need to make sure we're on the same page, right? And we even pulled out each other's credit reports and looked at them. That was actually a requirement before I would get married. So that's
tough.
the part they make fun of me on. But no, seriously, we sat down and we kind of got our game plan together. And I think when you're married, it's really important that you have open communication and you're talking to each other and you're on the same page, because it's a key source of conflict if you're not, right? And so having that conversation can really keep that conflict away, because you know exactly what's going on with each other. And that's especially important if you're in the military and you've got a spouse that deploys, because now you've got one person back home that's really trying to take care of everything. There's some different things that married couples can do. For example, they can sit down once a month and have a budget meeting. That may not sound exciting.
I'm excited.
But you're excited. That doesn't surprise me. But but it's important to do that, because then you can kind of take a look at, okay, how much money did we spend this past month? Did we spend too much in certain areas, and kind of adjust. I think it's also important too that you give each other some freedom. So something my wife and I do is we have a separate checking account just for spending. And so every pay period we put a certain amount in there, and that's money that either one of us can just go spend. We don't have to ask permission to the other spouse. So we've kind of given each other an allowance or a spending limit that we can just go have fun with. And again, that helps to avoid some of the conflict of spending too much and then not having money to pay the bills.
Do you recommend that couples have separate accounts private from each other to avoid some of the possible fights that might pop up about money?
That was kind of a blind spot for me with my wife. And so for years we had one joint account. I'm happy as heck because everything goes in there, we pay the bills. And my wife is a nurse and became a nurse practitioner. And really, she wanted some of that fun money you talked about. She wanted to be able to go buy a gift for me and not have it show up where I could see it. So I think to Michael's point, the key thing is to have a conversation, figure out how it works for you, because it doesn't work the same for everybody, and then move forward with that.
I like that idea too, to have the family fund in a joint account, but then have a little bit on the side for birthdays and other types of, where you want to gift, things like that. But it has to be a shared and an agreed upon amount that goes into those funds. And then also for the household budget, I think that we need to have a good communication plan for those big purchases. So maybe there's a threshold. If my husband wants to buy something or I want to buy something for the household, that if it's over a certain amount of money, we probably need to have a conversation about it before we go arbitrarily take the money out to do that.
In terms of an emergency savings account, should we all have 6 months worth of savings?
When it comes to the emergency savings, there is kind of a general rule of thumb out there, right? Which is to have anywhere from 3 to 6 months worth of your basic monthly living expenses set aside. Obviously that number can seem a little bit daunting, right? Especially initially. And so really the goal there is to just start working towards that, right? So you can set an initial goal for yourself of, say $500 to $1,000, right? And then once you hit that goal, then start working towards 1 month worth of living expenses. And then continue to work your way up from there to get to that 3 to 6 month mark. The difference there in 3 to 6 months really just depends on your situation. So for example, if you're the sole wage earner and you have a family and everyone's dependent on your income, you probably want to have that 6 months worth of living expenses set aside in case something happens. Obviously in the military, your job is typically a little bit more secure, but you never know when something could happen, right? I mean, you could end up getting injured or hurt on a deployment, and so it's important that you have that set aside. If you've got 2 wage earners and income's pretty equal, you may be okay with just the 3 months worth of living expenses set aside.
This sounds like an odd question, but how do you make finances fun? so that when one partner in a relationship wants to have a conversation or that monthly budget meeting, the other doesn't feel like, oh, here they go again, talking about money. I feel like that's all we talk about. I just want to live and enjoy ourselves. We work hard.
So when you're having a meeting about finances, it's probably to achieve a goal. And it's always fun when you can think about the goal, think about what you're wanting to achieve, but it's also really fun when you get to spend the money for that goal.
Together.
Together.
Right?
So if you're having a budget meeting because you want to carve out some money for a vacation and you both really want to go on that, it makes that meeting more fun. It makes it really less of a chore. And then when you're on the vacation, it's an opportunity to remind the spouse that may not have been as excited. Remember those budget meetings we had? This is why we had them. And so really to get their buy-in. And when you get their buy-in, there's less conflict. And when there's less conflict, it's a lot more fun.
And I think one of the things you want to avoid is having a situation where the only time you communicate about money is when something's going wrong. And so it can be a lot more fun if we're doing it, having a date night or whatever, a budget night, as opposed to arguing about the fact that the account is overdrafted or some emergency came up that we couldn't pay for. So I think setting the conditions so we're going to have it each month at a certain time as opposed to waiting till something blows up.